Have you ever tried to figure out your story or your brand message and that magical piece of you that stands out among the crowd? What makes you unique? What makes you authentic? I am so excited today about this guest, my friend Lalita, who is such a treasure. My amazing friend Sharon, who you guys have met on the podcast before, introduced me to Lalita, and we worked together a couple of times. I think we had at least 3 calls total. And I've been dripping out some of my takeaways here on the podcast from working with Lalita. And one of my most exciting projects that I'm working on was inspired by my time with her and, how my true, message and purpose in this world is to help people do what they love and make a living doing it. And she helped me uncover that, which it sounds so simple. Like, Liz, what do you mean? That's so simple. But that's the point. I was overcomplicating everything and losing that underlying golden piece of my purpose in my offers, right? Our offers are very different than our purpose and our story. And Lalita did such a beautiful job of helping pull that out of me so that I could see it so clearly. And I'll never forget her saying, what if your 7-year-old daughter came up to you and said, "Mommy, why do you help the people that you help?" And, my answer was so simplistic that I want more people to do what they love and make a living doing it, because when people do that, good things happen, right? That's how simple it is. So Lalita is incredibly smart and intuitive and passionate. And I was so excited that she said yes to be on the podcast. Lalita is a 2-time TEDx speaker, the creative of the highly acclaimed method, Truth Sessions, and the founder of The Big Voice Inside. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Messy Success Podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Henson, and I help high-performing artists and creative leaders grow and scale communities so that marketing is easy. This podcast combines business tips and real-life experiences in being the creative entrepreneur that we all are. So you're in the right place if you want to leave feeling a little bit more confident and normalize these day-to-day struggles that we all experience as business owners. And you can do this while mastering your marketing so that business is light and easy. I'm so glad you're joining me here, where we can get a little bit messy, a little bit creative, and it's okay to be super ambitious. Let's get started. All right, Lalita, I am so beyond excited to have you here today. I have been quietly sharing about my experience working with you with some of my students and some of our listeners. And I told them, I said, I'm not really going to say much yet, but I'm bringing her on the podcast. So this is just a really, really exciting episode for me. So I have read your fancy bio, but tell us a little bit about who you are and how you help people.
Who I am and how I help people. And thank you for having me as a guest. It's been a pleasure to work with you so far, and being interviewed's fun. So here we are. A little bit about me and how it is that I help others. So for the last 13 years, I've worked in branding, and I've helped people communicate who it is that they are and what folks call their value proposition. But really, it's the essence of who they are and why what they do matters. And then now, as what I'm doing is expanding, there's a focus on helping specifically women identifying people free their voices. So it's branding, but it's also with a deeper calling for what you're really here to do on a stage and scale that you want.
Yeah, I love that. And when we worked together, I was having this struggle of just feeling like I needed a bigger, more dramatic story. And my favorite takeaway was when we had this moment where you were like, it's okay to be the protagonist and not the antagonist. And I've probably done a terrible job of trying to recreate the magic that was in that conversation. So, can you tell us a little bit about when you're working with someone like me who doesn't have a rags to riches story, but really aligns with that showing people what's possible, type of vision? Um, Tell us a little bit more about how we got to that point of the antagonist and the protagonist and people listening that feel like they don't have a story. Let's help them.
100%. Yeah. So, first off, I think everyone has a story. It's a question of how much of that story do you want to share, which is something that we had spoken a lot about. How much of that story do you want to share? And then also, is that story really of service to the people that you're aiming to help? So stories are ways of building trust. They're ways of demonstrating expertise, and they're ways of showing the people that you want to help that really communicating and connecting from the heart, but showing them that you've been where they want to go on some level. And so when we were working together and in the different sessions that we had done, it's really about, so it's two parts. The first piece is, I think that on some level, when we really slow it down, if you're here to share a message, you probably have some rags to riches. It might not be that you were completely broke and then you made $1 billion. It's not the story in the way that this industry tends to paint, but it's something substantial that's happened in your life that you've overcome, that's helped to curate or create the context, the stage of your story. If you think about a play or a musical, you're going to look at a show, there's a stage, there's scenery. You've had some scenery in your life. That's relevant. The thing is that we don't need to tell everyone every detail of the scenes of our life to necessarily be authoritative, to share that story that's of value, and to connect with others. So the first thing is recognizing we likely do have a story. The question isn't so much the details, but it's what is at the heart of it. What's the message? And then from the protagonist and antagonist lens, it's a lot of people in this space, like you're saying, and we'll clarify for people, they want to have the story of, you know, I was I was abused as a child, and now I've healed, and now I have this like top podcast that's like in the top 5% and everyone listens to it, and this is me going from this to that. And that's a high bar to set. One, because that invites people to have to share a story they maybe don't want to share, talking about their earlier experience. We had spoken a lot about emoting on the internet. Not everyone wants to be that transparent, nor do you need to be. So if you go from that lens, antagonist or protagonist, no, switch, antagonist, meaning focusing on the bad thing that happened to you and now how you've overcome it, you can instead focus on the place that you're taking people, which is the protagonist. So protagonists in stories sing about and talk about the way that the world could be. Antagonists are the catalysts, the people that show the bad things that happen and the people that want to get in your way. So a lot of stories focus on the pain, focus on the crappy parts, how you've overcome it. You don't have to do that. You can focus and paint the picture of what it could be like if people were willing and able to implement some of what it is that you're talking about and the outcome that that can bring them to. So even though you'll have antagonist pieces in your story, you don't have to make that the main crux of it. Is that
Yes, I
useful?
love that. And I love that when we were talking, you used the example of like Ariel and, wanting to be part of their world, and that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of being the protagonist of like showing people what's possible. And when I picture the antagonist, I almost picture like someone that's kind of like stirring the pot. Like, let's just focus on everything that's wrong with you so that I can swoop in and like help you heal it, rather than let's just focus on what's possible. Like, doesn't really matter where our starting point is. And that was just that was a good breakthrough moment for me, because I realized like that being the protagonist is enough. Like, I didn't have to have this dramatic thing for people to be able to relate to me or where I wanted to take them.
100%. And protagonists have, so if I'm speaking, I'll often say talk to me as if, or I'll speak to, like, talk to me as if you're a 5-year-old, because it super simplifies things. So a protagonist is like the main character of the story. They're the one who has the big dream, which anyone that's listening to this, I would imagine they have some sort of dream, something big or small that they want to create. The protagonist has been through shit. It would be a really boring story if the protagonist was just woke up one day and was like, nothing's ever happened to me. The fact that people want to teach anything, build anything, means they have a solution. It's just which part of that story do we hone in on and how much granularity. People think in this space that authenticity is, I'm going to, emote on the internet. I'm going to tell everyone everything about myself. You need to know exactly how I feel 24/7. And then there's this other side that's like, be super buttoned up, don't ever show any of the behind the scenes thing. Neither one of those, I think, is authentic. I think they're both actually quite selfish.
Mm.
Instead, ask yourself, how much are you comfortable with sharing? Why are you sharing it? And what's actually of service to the people that are listening and are benefiting from your wisdom? Because when you're really solid in yourself, you don't need people to understand you or see you. You want them to see you and understand you because you know it's a benefit to them. There's a very big difference. So then it's just a question of which method works better, protagonist, antagonist. And that'll shift depending upon where you're at in your journey and who you're speaking to.
Yeah, that's so good. And there are little examples where I'll bring out the antagonist. Like my most recent podcast episode, I went back to the archives and I told a story about college and somebody that didn't like me because I wanted to win. So there are these like little moments, and we'll find out. That episode isn't live yet. So we'll find out how that's received. I have no idea, but it was definitely one of those where I was like, okay, this is a little outside of my box, but I do feel like there was this huge takeaway. The value was in seeing the patterns in my life. And you helped me identify some patterns as well, of patterns where I might have been making myself smaller to accommodate, to people please, right? Like, oh, they don't like me because I'm so ambitious, or my ambition is annoying other people.
Mhm.
And the whole reason I went back to the archives to share this story from college is because finally, 20 years later, I'm seeing some of these patterns, and how anytime that I struggled to show up authentically, it's because I was in some way listening and shrinking to accommodate others. So I love that you put words to that, because I was just going on this journey of, I feel really called to share this, but I've got to button it up with like value for them, and not just, I feel like sharing this dramatic story.
Mhm.
So thank you for kind of validating that, what I just went through, but also knowing that even if we don't have a rags to riches story, there are moments that will develop into patterns that can kind of play our antagonist journey.
100%. And I would slow this down even further because I know that in some of our discussions we spoke about things that had occurred in your life that one could share, that one would say, oh, this would be really powerful. And it's like, maybe this isn't the context for that, maybe this isn't the place for that, and there's timing to these parts of our story. So if our entire life is a story, certain things get to be unveiled or not unveiled at different parts, and that's okay.
Mhm.
It's There's also too, what I notice in this space a lot is, so often people want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be validated. Show up on a podcast, I want to have a following, and they really want to help people, but there's also this element sometimes of, but I want you to see me too. And this is, I think, when people start to share or overshare on the internet and they want people like, look at me, see me, I'm pouring myself into this. I would invite people to slow down in that moment and ask what they're really asking of the people they're trying to help. Because if it's for you, that's something you get to do for yourself, to take care of yourself, to be in a position to serve, and simply because you're worth it. That's not necessarily what your audience requires or wants. And again, going back to being really solid in yourself, that authenticity, which is really just being true to yourself, then you can show up and lead. So it's not that sharing's wrong or just like showing up, sharing your story, but this idea, the people pleasing, oversharing, I see these as obstacles that get in people's way when it comes to doing the work they're here to do and really sharing their message and doing that authentically, which looks different and feels different based on different people and in different scenarios.
Yeah. I recently have been trying to figure out like why do I not enjoy social media like I used to? I mean, I used to like live and breathe showing up on Instagram, showing up in the stories, sharing my day to day, and I think I enjoyed it, but like now suddenly I'm like it's just not a place of enjoyment for me. I'm not really resisting, but I think what has happened as I've continued to do this really deep work and continue to level up, I'm realizing the reason I was so into it before was because I was seeking that validation. I was
Mhm.
posting to get the comments. I was posting to see what people would say, to see if they supported me, to see if they would share it. Whereas now I'm really just kind of posting my content for my purpose, for my value, and I kind of post it and I'm not having that same attachment to the response that I get or don't get. So it's I don't want to say it's like I don't enjoy it like I used to, but it's a different reason. It's a different purpose for using it, which means there are going to be weeks where like I'm just not going to post anything.
Mhm. 100%. And
Yeah.
also, too, so I'll take long sabbaticals from social media, and that's shifting a bit with like bringing on different support and having people. So, like, I'll go through large sprints where there's huge creative surge, there's a lot of creation. But if I post all those things at the same time, or if I'm the one that's doing the posting, it's exhausting. It's not
Mm.
zone of genius, as people like to talk about. But then also, it's like a lot of posts, and then it's kind of crickets. What I found to be more effective, especially when it comes to, if I slow this down, we have work to do. I'm going to say, like, anyone listening to this, a mentor of mine calls it building your tower. When we're really attuned to that, and when I hear you talk about the ambitious piece and feeling bad about it, I get that because I felt like that. Living in Europe, it's a completely different vibe in how people perceive work and contribution. Their government is set up differently. Like, it's different. So they take a lot more vacation. There's different value systems, which works. But from the ambitious piece and like slowing things down and creating that space to protect our energy, to protect our voice, to be able to protect that listening, to then be able to go and build that tower. Social media, I find, is often a lot of unnecessary noise and
Mm.
sometimes even an addictive quality to it. So seeing it for what it is and a tool and why one is using it, and then protecting that space to be able to create from, listen from, lead from, and understand that's a tool that gets to live for me outside. I don't want social media super close. I don't need to be
Mhm.
on social media. I delete it off my phone. It's a tool, a very specific tool, and that's it.
Yeah.
Protecting one's energy, protecting one's voice and their ideas.
Yes.
Be solid in
And
themselves.
speaking of that, I know you're really passionate about the power of silence, and this has been something I've been really working on the last couple of months. I happened to read a book and listen to a podcast simultaneously about the power of taking silence in your day. And I looked back and I realized like none of my greatest ideas have come from the internet, my computer, my phone. Every single one of my breakthroughs and great ideas has come from taking a shower, taking a walk, you know, laying in bed at 3 a.m. And when you're
Hmm.
talking about protecting yourself from that energy, and I know you feel strongly about silence as well, tell us a little bit about how powerful it is to take intentional, silence every day.
Silence is power. Silence is absolute power. People think that to speak, like to have a voice, that you need to be speaking. I disagree. I think that you can have a very strong voice and arguably sometimes a stronger voice in what you don't say. And in the silence that cultivates your presence, which is speaking even when you're verbally not. So the power of silence day to day is rejuvenation, it's restoration, it's power, it's authority. It's the different quality of how I enter a space, versus running into a room, being frazzled and ungrounded. That's not strong leadership to me. And people don't, especially people who are attuned to that, who are high achievers. I won't even say high achievers, people who are creating in the world. They're not going to follow or listen to that because they've attuned a level of leadership within themselves that they're listening for something different. And if I show up like that, I'm playing a song that they're not going to want to dance to. And because I'm so committed to leading and being of service, I get to show up in a very specific way. So silence is also a conversation with myself, with a higher power as I understand it. And it ensures that I'm being true to myself, that I'm being grounded, and that I'm really being directed. Sometimes I've struggled with silence because I want to move more quickly than what silence permits. Meaning I want to take action before I have the quote unquote answer. But silence can look like meditation. It can look like prayer. I actually endeavor to live my life as silence. Not meaning I don't ever speak, but if you were to see my physical space, people will often say it's very peaceful, it's very quiet, it's very restful. Because when I'm in these spaces, I can hear better. I can listen more deeply, not just with words, but with what I'm feeling, with what it is that I'm seeing. And if I really believe in myself and what I'm here to do and what I love to do and be, then I'm going to gift myself that, because that's one of the highest tools I know to use to be as effective and happy and healthy as possible. If you want to see how effective you are, look at how much the quality of silence you have in your life, how much space you have. You don't necessarily need a lot, but the quality, like a nice dark chocolate. You don't need a ton of it, but adequate amounts that are the perfect richness for you.
Yeah.
That'll indicate how effective you are, and also where your listening is and who and what you're listening to.
Yeah, I love that it's the quality, because I would not say I get a lot of quantity of silence, especially with, 3 kids and a dog and a business, but I take advantage of the moments, whether it's at the gym or, a few minutes in the morning before I head downstairs, in the shower, just intentional. Let's not think about problems. Let's not think about what we're doing tomorrow, and just allow my creative mind. Or even if I'm at my computer and I'm stuck, I have learned get up and walk away. And
Mm-hmm.
by the time I come back, the idea has formulated. But we think we have to pull inspiration from so many places, but it's already there. Like, it's already within us.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, too, with a really cool practice that I've found is being silent, even in the midst of being around people or being. So as I'm sitting here, I can still practice silence. And people will be like, what are you talking about? You're being interviewed, you're speaking. What does that mean? Because I'm listening. It's from where I'm listening. There's an energetic quality. There's the way I'm tuning, the way I'm paying attention to you, the way that I'm listening. There's a silence. It doesn't mean that my mind is 100% quiet. It doesn't mean that the world ceases to exist. It means that how I encounter it has a quality of space, a quality of presence, and a willingness to meet it. And then it also means that I carve out space to listen. If we know that our best ideas are potentially, even as a hypothesis, some of our greatest joys, our best sleeps, just like the things that fuel us can come from silence, even if we just agree on basic level that some of our best ideas come from that place, then it is the most strategic thing to do to guard that with everything that you have. So whether that's hiring an assistant to guard precious time, to turn something over, whether that's letting go of certain things, knowing that it's not of your highest and greatest use of time, it becomes a must as opposed to a maybe. And when we really step into that, that increases our authority. That increases how people perceive us because we're owning it. Do you know what I mean? We're really sitting in that. So people, if you've ever met like a monk who really practices meditation, who's really on that path, there's a presence about them. And there's
Mm-hmm.
something almost magnetic and intriguing. And they're not saying a whole lot verbally. If everyone's on social media doing the most, that should be an indication of what not to do. Because most people, we're not one to follow the crowd. I've never seen the crowd have the smartest or most effective ideas. So they might be the loudest, and that's also why silence is powerful. Just because it's loud doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's loud and it's front of your face. Silence gives you a chance to see that and also to see what's beyond it and create the space to manage it appropriately. So I'm a huge, huge fan of silence. And I live in New York City, folks. So I'm not saying this living in a cave.
Well, and I love that you related it to authentic listening and leaning in. And I think about my friend and I have described it as like, oh, they have this thing where like you're talking and they're leaning in. You know, it's like this quality that we haven't been able to name, but when you just know that like they're all in on the conversation and everything else like has been silenced around it, and we always say to each other like, oh yeah, Ty, he's got that thing, like he leans in and he just has this thing that he's listening, and it's a quality that so few people like really fully embody. Because how many times have you been in a conversation, I'm saying you but also everybody listening, where someone is looking at you but you
Mm-hmm.
know with total certainty they're not actually hearing you. Like this guy
Yep.
I used to work with would literally look at me and still be typing on his keyboard, like as if he was engaging in the conversation. He did not
And
have that magical thing.
100%. And those are so much of that not paying attention to me often comes from fear or fear of
Mhm.
missing out, or I need to do this thing, or there's something more effective that I could be doing or spending my time. And there's a mentor, Evie Pompora's, highly recommend her book, Becoming Bulletproof. She is a former Secret Service agent and she protected various US presidents. And the thing is that when you're in the Secret Service, that's badass to begin with. But then additionally, not everyone in the Secret Service, only the top percentage of the top percent ever protect the presidents. So the fact that she had made it to this level spoke to her level of expertise in this area. And one of the things that she talked about is what she learned about leadership from watching and being with the presidents one on one for years. I mean, she was in the room with them, silently observing, protecting them. And part of what she said about President Clinton and what she spoke about with President Obama is their ability. They knew whenever they were to walk either of those presidents, like from one place to another, that whatever the time frame was, if they allotted 10 minutes, they needed really to give themselves like 20 or 30. I'm making the numbers up
Mhm.
because those presidents would stop and meet and shake hands with everyone. And Clinton was infamous for always remembering your name and being
Mhm.
able to slow down. And both of them speak slowly and they speak fully in their words. They take up space when they speak. So there's this presence of when you're with them, you feel like you're the only one. And if you've ever fallen in love before, you know that feeling.
Mhm.
So when we think that we're speaking to a million people, like I need to, the most common everyone says in this space, like I need to reach a million people. If I had $1 for every client that they wanted to reach a million, which is fantastic, but you don't reach a million all at once. You reach a
Right.
million by I'm speaking to you, which is going to now speak to these other to all the amazing people who are going to listen to this. It's one by one. There's always, even if you're speaking to a group, there's still the group of one. So when we miss these opportunities, and then think of how your reputation is built, all of the people that have an interaction with you remember you as that. What was the quality of that interaction? If they're
Mhm.
dominoes, yes, there might be a million dominoes, But right now, there's that domino. And there was a missed opportunity to make a difference in that person's life because you weren't really there. You were some other place, thinking that that might be better. And that's okay. But is it useful? Is it compassionate?
Yeah. I always look at that as the difference between a leader and an influencer, right? Like an influencer can reach a lot of people, but a leader can make a difference to just one person.
Mm-hmm.
And they show up the same, whether it's one person or whether it's hundreds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Okay. I have a question for you.
Shoot.
Because you helped me kind of define my purpose. Like, look at all these things you did for me. And we talked about, my actual purpose, like on this planet, is to help people do what they love and make money doing it. Like, do what you love and learn how to make a living doing it. Like my mom taught me. And since then, like I've kind of talked about, we have a purpose, and then we have our superpowers, which is what we're really good at. And then we have our offers, which is how we make money. So sometimes our offers and how we make money, yes, they're related to our purpose, but it's very different, right? Like I'm not just going to show up and say, I help, people do what they love and make money doing it. I've got to package that up and kind of go down the line. But anyways, in kind of developing all of this and just continuing to do the work that we started, a lot of people have said, well, how did you find your purpose? How did you know that that is your purpose? So I would love for you to teach us, for someone that's listening that is like, I have no idea why I'm on this planet. Where would you begin?
It's a big question.
I know, right? I can tell you the little bits that I've put out there so far, just the intuitively that come up, are asking them like, when do you feel the most joy? When do you feel the most fulfilled? But that's as far as I've gotten, Lalita.
So I'll speak to a specific group of people. I'll speak for a specific group of people, which I think is the group of people who are going to be listening to this. And I'll tell a story. So I was speaking to a friend this past weekend, and he's a Buddhist friend that we met. I met him at a monastery. And I recently had asked him about ambition. I was like, what are your thoughts on ambition? Because there's different philosophies around if this is good, bad, depending on the culture. And there's a Buddhist view as well. And he shared with me, Lalita, he's from Vietnam. And he said, I know it's bad to say in the US, but I'm not ambitious. I'm not. I'm curious. I'm happy with what I have. I like to spend my weekends doing X, Y, and Z, but I don't have this drive to go and do these things. And so I sat with ambition and I looked at it through a Buddhist lens, and I landed on, for me, it's about aspiration and drive. And it's an aspiration not for solely self-fulfilling purposes of I want you to like me, I want these different things that are not going to last anyways. But if I slow it down, it's I'm committed to fulfill something. So for purpose, if we slow this down and think about the group of people I'm thinking of, you wouldn't be asking the question if you didn't on some level know. Know what it is and know that you have it. Like I've never asked myself the question, see, now I have to think of a question I've never asked myself. Like I've never asked myself the question, should I dig graves? Specific example. Because I have no interest in it. It's never even occurred to me. It's not, and I've thought of a lot of things. I'm a 5 in numerology, which means like I've thought of all the things. So the sheer fact that you're asking yourself means you're in the room with it. You're in the room with the thing that you're looking for, because you wouldn't even have the question if you didn't have that sense. And I share the story about my Buddhist friend because he very clearly is like, I don't have this drive. He's not asking himself this. That's not in the room with him. Other things are in the room with him. So one, acknowledging the fact that you even have the question is an indication that you're in the space with it. So pretend you're in the room with it. Okay, because I'm asking this question, this is the stage. This is the space that I'm in. Then the second part of it is if you are someone that feels called to help people's lives, to teach them something, which is often this space, sometimes looks like coaches, authors, creating companies that do good for others, even if it's not literal. If that's really the calling, like that drive, like if I could really do that, or I'd want to write a book, then it becomes a question of sitting down and being honest with yourself about what is, we'll go the protagonist, antagonist. What's the best thing that's happened to me and the worst thing that's happened to me in my life? Because for you, the best thing that happened, one of the best things that happened to you that was so unique is that your mom instilled in you that, you could do what you love and like, and sustain and thrive off of that, which to you is like, yeah, hello. But to like everybody else, so many others, not so much. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, my mom was a social worker and my dad worked his way up as a manager at General Mills, a factory in Buffalo, New York. So I saw people work a lot of long hours doing work that was important, but not that took from them, that really took from them. So I didn't see that. So hearing you share that best thing, the protagonist, what could the world look like if this was possible? The antagonist side is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. And that's a moment of silence to have with yourself. Because where the worst thing happened to you is the core of your message. It's the core of what you are. It's your truth that you were going to share with the world. Maybe not directly, literally telling them the gory details, but it's what you embody. It's what you have conviction around. And you'll know it by when you feel it. I don't know that purpose is necessarily static, but I do think it's like a river that directs you someplace and it gives you momentum to go somewhere. So if you know you're sitting in a river, you have the question. So by having the question, you know that you have the thing that you want. 2, does it make you happy? 3, to get in the realm of it is what's the best thing that happened to me and what's the worst thing that ever happened to me? Because those are the double sides of things that you will teach and that you will embody and become. And then finally, I think it's also what you shared about looking at your skills, like what fulfills you, what nourishes you, what are your talents, like what are you actually really good at that you want to share with the world? I'm good at variety. I'm good with people. I'm great with being put on the spot and improvising, teaching. These are good things to know. Or maybe you're someone that likes to be more behind the scenes and technical. Everyone in this space of online business sells things as like, this is the one thing you need to make a living. It's not true. There's many ways to make a living, exactly like what you said. So that's why your gift and your message is so beautiful, because for everyone that wants to believe that's true, you're proof that it is. Mm. And that's what you get to become for people when you lean into what's the best thing that's happened to you, protagonist, how the world could be. What's the worst thing that's happened to you, what you've overcome, not because you're proving it to people, but because you've lived it and you've walked it. If I want to go to battle, I want to know people who have gone through battle. I'm not trying to go with Josie, who like knits on Saturday nights and has never fought anything in her life. Like, cool, Josie, I'll come to you for knitting. But if we're going to war, I want Juan, who's been like studying for 30 years, like, so that's where I would start. And then at the core is the quiet piece, is really listening, praying on it, meditating on it, journaling on it, and being willing to take steps towards it. Because if you think of it as a direction and not a solid thing, it'll give you fluidity and flexibility in how you show up. Nothing stays the same forever. Not your offerings, not even how you look. We're going for direction, not static. This is the one thing, because it's going to evolve.
I love that. And I love that you brought up the intuition piece of if you can think it, it already exists. And that's kind of the way my mentor and teacher always says it, is he says, if you even had the thought, that means there's a version of you that this is 100% possible.
100%.
So, yeah, that was really cool. And that was cool to see you try to think of something that you've never thought of, right? Because it's like, oh gosh, what is a thought that I've never had? And then, oh yeah, that makes sense. No wonder I've never had that thought versus the thoughts that we do have, especially the recurring thoughts over and over. Like when I told you that, I'm going to write a book, I guess, like, and that keeps coming up and keeps coming up. So there's a version of me that's like, it's already happening. Right. So I just have to continue to lean in and to explore. That's so, so good, and such a good way for people to recognize their intuition of like the questions that are being asked are already possible.
Definitely. And to look inside before life will talk to us from the outside and the inside. And for me, I knew I had a purpose from literally like one of my earliest memories. And then I spent 30 years trying to figure out what it was, almost compulsively and without peace. And the truth is, I think I was always going to land on what it was, what it is, and what it's been. And I probably could have relaxed a bit more on the process. So if you have the question, know you're in the room with it. And instead of trying to grip it, what would relaxing look like around it? Because that allows it to bubble up. That allows you to have a conversation with it. That allows you to hear where you really want to go.
Yeah. So good. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I could ask you all the questions. Is there anything that you want to share with us? Anything that you're feeling called to share after our coaching sessions, or just anything that's come up for you in this conversation?
What I'll share is there's something that I call the big voice inside. Some people call it the little voice inside. Some people call it God. Some people call it intuition. You can name it whatever you'd like. For me, it's the most authentic, the truest thing about me. And I would say that it's probably the truest thing. I would see if it's the same, if that's true for you too. When I say the big voice inside, I'm referencing when we take everything else away. Like if you imagine that you have a microphone on your heart, you have a microphone inside of you. And all you have to do is lean in and listen to that microphone ever so quietly. And when you get really skilled, you learn how to speak directly from it. And often what happens is people get a lot of value out of what you say when you're just listening to that microphone and repeating it. And some of the best plays, musicals, movies, books, speeches, I would argue, have come from that place. And I say this because when you're seeking to make a difference, for those that are listening, when you're seeking to make a difference in the lives of others, when you really, really want to be heard, I want you to imagine that there's this tiny little person sitting inside your body, sitting inside your heart. And the real goal in all of this is to help them get up to that microphone, to help them listen. For me, that mic is in my heart and it's in my gut. I wonder where yours is in you. And when you know where that is and you can tune into that, it grounds you. And it gives what you're saying and what you want to say and who you want to be and who you are immense power. So instead of, just as a test, just as a trial, instead of looking at things on the outside, scouring in books, going on social media, asking all your friends, slow down and imagine where that little person is inside you. And what's the distance between that person and the mic inside you? And then when you're really honest, what is the distance made of? Is it made of the stuff that you heard when you were a kid? Is it made of glitter? Is it made of fear? What is it made of for you? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? Because that's the distance and that's the journey between where you are and where it is that you want to go. And as I'm saying this, I encourage you not to listen with your human ears or your brain. I encourage you to feel if what I'm saying feels true to you. Does it sit somewhere as true inside? And if it does, take a moment to be with yourself and to see where that person is, to see where that microphone is. Because what we often do if we're that little person inside, is we run around in place and we try to get all the other things in order. You don't need to do all that. You might be 5 steps from the thing you really want, but you don't know it because you're moving so fast, or you don't know it because you've been told by all these online courses you've bought that you just need to do X, Y, and Z. Both can be true. But what's more powerful is to be tuned into that first part, the Mike and the little person, what I call the big voice inside, that very clear voice. It may not speak with words, it may speak in feelings, it may speak in pictures. That, to me, is who we really are. And when we know that and we speak from that, that's when we're powerful in silence. Because we don't have to say shit. We know who we are. And we're comfortable in that. And we know that when we're given a mic, we trust we'll know what to say. Caveat to that is preparation is also important. I'm not suggesting just showing up to things and winging everything with arrogance or entitlement.
I love that. I do find I actually do better without a script. Like when I can really tune into that intuitive voice. I stopped creating scripts for myself. And that doesn't mean I don't prepare, like you said. But what I'm also hearing is just the power in the physical body and what the physical body can tell us. And I did an exercise recently where I slowed down a story enough to identify a feeling in the physical body during part of the story. And it allowed me to be able to identify when I'm starting to lean into that people pleasing version of myself
Mm-hmm.
in a physical way. So now, if I'm really busy and in my head, if I feel that feeling in my body, it's like an alarm that goes off like, nope, this is little Liz trying to people please. Let's stay in leader Liz. What do you really need to do? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was kind of picturing as you talked about the person in the mic is like my ability to speak without a script, which I do feel like I'm very I don't know if talented is the right word. I'm very comfortable doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
then knowing that the physical body, the little person, can just tell us so much when we learn to like identify and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
so good. I
I
mean,
agree.
you fed it to me, right? I'm just like, I love when we have these moments of like, you're giving me an experience, right? And hopefully the listeners too. But your storytelling and your words is holding space for us to have an experience. And this is what I work with my mentor all the time too. And you're not telling me how it should be. You're not telling me how the outcome should feel or what I need to do with it. But then I get this opportunity to share with you, here's the experience that I had by taking in your words. Like that's so cool, right?
Mm-hmm. And what I find, understanding how we speak to ourselves is really important. And I say that so I'll often hear people say, feelings aren't facts. That is such a dangerous phrase. And I say that because for someone like myself, my intuition speaks to me in feelings, not in the feelings of, you know, I'm talking about intuitive feelings, like my body speaks to me. So this saying of feelings are facts, when we deny what it is that we know, not absolutely, but in the moment by based on how we feel, that's not useful. On the other side of that, to add to what you're saying about there's so much power in the body, it's knowing, how am I spoken to? How do I speak to myself? Do I learn? Do I understand most through feelings? Do I understand most through sensation? Do I get pictures in my mind? Do I hear things? Am I very literal and logical? Does it come to me through books? Like, what is my language? How do I interpret what's around me? And when you know what your core language is, then you also know how to communicate with others in a way that they'll likely connect with. I know that people that are really good with visuals and feelings naturally connect with what I say more. I don't have to do more in those instances because I naturally speak in that. For people who don't have connection to feeling as much, it's a little bit more work on my part because I see in feelings and because I see in pictures. So that's how I communicate. So I say this because the body tells us our own language. And if we listen closely, we'll learn what other people's languages are too by how they speak. And we can communicate and adjust accordingly if we want to then speak in their language. They may not be feelers, they may be people that hear things. So give them something audible.
That's so
The
good.
conversation's so good. I feel like I could talk all day.
I know you're magic. You're magic. I just want to pull it all out of you. I love it. So I know we do have to kind of wrap up, but thank you so much for sharing that at the end. I wanted to put you on the spot a little bit because I knew you would take your time and really say what people need to hear. So that was
Thank you.
amazing. So tell us if there's anything big that you're working on, how we can support you and how we can find you.
Cool. You can find me so my website's iamlalita.com. Everything is linked there. I'm also on social media at iamlalita, IamLalita. And at the moment, I'm doing one-on-one work with people who want to dive deep to bring their voice to the world. And I'm also having a women's group that's 6 months. It's called Vocal Liberation, and it's focused specifically on women identifying people who are here to free their voices and step on the stages that are ready for them and that are of their choosing. So if that's something that you're interested in and you'd like to learn more, go to my website and contact us directly. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Cool. And I'll put everything in the show notes as well. And I always love to do introductions. So if anybody listens to this episode and you want me to introduce you to Lalita, I would be happy to do that as well. So thank you so much for joining. This really meant the world to me after, our time together. I really just wanted to share you with everyone and get your version of the experience as well. And I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much. You're a rock star, and this was an absolute blast. I hope that everyone gets a ton of value out of it.
I know they will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. I told you guys that was going to be such a special episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and pressing play today. It means the world to me that you're here. This is episode 135. So you can find all the show notes at elizabethhenson.co/E135. You can connect with Lalita there. Please let her know if you listened to this episode and loved it. Also, if this episode was helpful for you, please share it with a friend or leave us a review on iTunes. It truly means the world to us. This podcast is going to be one of our big projects for 2024 to continue just growing and expanding and helping more people. So the more you can help us do that, the more people we can help. And it truly makes my heart so happy. And I'm full of gratitude to have you here with me. All right, you guys, I will see you next week.